What would you do if you heard a cry in the middle of the night? A soft, haunting, and impossible to ignore. Would you dismiss it as an animal's call or let curiosity pull you toward the unknown? In a quiet rural village, Rosenda finds herself facing such a moment, a sound carried by the wind that stirs both fear and intrigue. Is it a plea for help or something far more unsettling? When her grandmother, Grandma Esther, warns her about disturbing forces best left alone, Rosenda must navigate the blurred lines between folklore and reality. This story beckons you into a world where the mundane collides with the supernatural, and one question lingers. What happens when you disrupt the peace of something not meant to be disturbed? Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let's get started. Tiyanak in Tiaong. Rosenda had always loved visiting her grandmother's house in Tiaong. Lying quietly between the rustling rice fields and the dark fringe of the forest, the ancestral home rested quietly under the vast shade of a centuries-old Nora tree. That summer, Rosenda came with 3 of her closest friends, Carla, Caroline, and Ollie. Used to the constant buzz of Manila, they were craving a quiet escape. Rosenda promised them fresh air, her grandmother's special delicacy, and hikes to the well-known Mount Barnahau. They arrived late one afternoon, greeted by the smell of sinakmani, a dessert made with glutinous rice, brown sugar, and milk, and the creaking welcome of wooden floorboards. Grandma Esther, ever gentle, hugged Rosenda tightly. Grandma Esther had always been the sweet, gentle, attentive, and endlessly loving. From the moment they arrived, she welcomed them with open arms and a warm smile that hadn't changed with age. She had already prepared their rooms, complete with freshly laundered linens that smelled faintly of sampagita, and placed woven mats neatly on the wooden floors. The house echoed with the comforting clatter of pots and pans as she cooked their favorite meals from scratch, steaming sinigang in tamarind and taro, so rich it made their mouths water, crisp fried lumpia, and sticky rice cake wrapped in banana leaves. Every detail, from the chilled glasses of calamansi juice to the extra pillows stacked near the windows, was her way of making sure they felt safe, cared for, and truly at home, like they have always been living there. Don't stray too far past the hill, her grandmother warned that night over dinner. There are things that walk in the trees. Things that cry like children. Rosenda and her friends laughed nervously. Is this like a kapre or aswang storalola? But Grandma Esther's expression did not change. No, it's actually worse than that. That night, the sound of wailing woke Rosenda. It was faint at first, you can barely hear it, like the soft cry of a baby carried on the whisper of the wind. It seemed to drift from somewhere near the forest's edge, shrouded in darkness and mystery. She sat up abruptly, her heart pounding as the sound pricked at her senses. Around her, the others remained undisturbed, still sprawled across the mats in the living room, their peaceful slumber undisturbed by the eerie call that only she seemed to hear. The next morning, as they gathered around the table for breakfast, she decided to bring it up. Did anyone else hear it last night? It was so creepy. It's like a baby crying, she asked, her voice tentative, still unsettled by the memory. Carla barely looked up from her plate of eggs and rice. Maybe it was just a stray cat, she said casually, shrugging. Or a baby goat, Caroline chimed in with a smirk, clearly amused at her sister's unease. She mimicked a bleating sound, earning a chuckle from Carla. But Grandma Esther, seated at the head of the table, didn't laugh. She set down her cup of coffee with deliberate care, her wrinkled face unusually somber. "Not everyone who cries is asking for help," she murmured, her voice low and cryptic, as if speaking to herself more than anyone else. The air seemed to shift. The playful banter died instantly, leaving a heavy, uncomfortable silence in its wake. Carla and Caroline exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier amusement replaced by curiosity and a trace of fear. She stared at her grandmother, trying to decipher the meaning behind those words. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of spoons against plates was the only noise in the room. A chill crept into her chest, the cryptic words hanging over them like a dark cloud. What did Grandma Esther mean? And why did it feel like she knew something the rest of them didn't? That afternoon, boredom led them into the woods behind the house. They followed the peeler-peel between paddies, past a rusted swing, and into the dense trees. The trail narrowed as they ventured further, laughing and teasing, until the sun began to slip. That's when they heard it again. A cry. Faint, pitiful, a baby's wail. Ollie frowned. "Wait, do you hear that?" Rosenda's skin prickled. "It's probably nothing." "No, it's coming from there." Carolyn pointed past a thicket, where the ground dipped near an old termite-eaten cross, half buried and crooked. The crying grew louder. Against her instincts, Rosenda stepped closer. Behind a fallen log lay a bundle, tattered cloth wrapped around something moving. It squirmed weakly. "Oh my God, it's a baby," Caroline whispered. Rosenda reached down. But as her hand touched the cloth, the wailing stopped. Then, everything happened so fast. The thing inside the bundle sprang up, not a baby, but a creature that looked like one. Its face was cracked and leathery, eyes too black and wide. It had a mouth full of needle-sharp teeth and limbs that bent the wrong way. It scuttled with terrifying speed, crawling like an insect. Carla screamed, "Run!" The Tiyanak shrieked, its cry now a mix of infant wailing and animal rage. It pounced at Ollie, slashing at his leg. Blood splattered across the grass as he fell. Rosenda grabbed a thick branch and swung wildly, hitting the creature. It shrieked again and darted back into the trees. They carried Ollie back, limping and shaking, as dusk fell. Grandma Esther met them at the gate, and then she saw Ollie's wounds and turned pale. "You disturbed its grave," she whispered. "You just encountered the Tiyanak." That night, they heard it again, circling the house, crying, scratching. Grandma Esther lit candles and laid out salt along the windowsills, muttering prayers in a mix of Latin and ancient Filipino. "We must return what you took," she told Rosenda. "But we didn't take anything." Rosenda replied, "You disturbed it. You stole its peace." "That was more than enough," Grandma Esther said firmly, her voice brooking no argument. The weight of her words lingered, carrying an authority that silenced even the questions forming in Rosenda's mind. At dawn, as the first hints of sunlight began to streak the sky, Rosenda and Grandma Esther ventured back to the thicket. The forest was still and hushed, the early morning mist curling around their feet as they walked in silence. Each step felt heavy, as though the earth itself resisted their presence. When they reached the spot, Rosenda hesitated. The memory of the strange, haunting cry from the night before sent a shiver through her. The area looked ordinary enough, just a cluster of trees with dense undergrowth, but there was an unshakable feeling that something unseen lingered here. Grandma Esther pulled out a white flower, its petals pristine and soft, and handed it to Rosenda. "Lay it there," she instructed, her tone softer now but still resolute. Rosenda knelt down, placing the flower carefully on the ground where they had first encountered the creature. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered a prayer under her breath, the words blending with the rustling leaves around them. Then, from a small flask, Grandma Esther poured holy water over the ground, the droplets shimmering in the pale light of dawn. As the water soaked into the earth, Rosenda felt a peculiar shift in the atmosphere, as if an invisible tension had been released. The forest seemed to exhale, and the oppressive weight that had hung in the air vanished. The crying that had haunted them for nights was gone, replaced by a profound silence that felt almost sacred. "It's done," Grandma Esther said, her voice steady but tinged with a weariness that spoke of experience. She turned and began walking back toward the house, leaving Rosenda to linger for a moment longer, gazing at the thicket. As they retraced their steps, Rosenda couldn't help but glance over her shoulder one last time. The forest looked no different, but she felt as though it had been watching them all along. Whatever they had disturbed was now at rest, or so she hoped. Back in Manila, Rosenda sometimes dreams of the forest and the great Noro tree. Its gnarled roots twisting through the earth like veins, its branches whispering secrets only the wind understands. In her dreams, the air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and old stories. She wakes with the taste of leaves on her tongue, the sound of rustling branches lingering in her ears. Sometimes, late at night, in the hush between passing jeepneys and the distant hum of traffic, she hears it. The faintest sound, a baby crying, just outside her window. Soft, almost too soft to be real, but always there, just beneath the edge of sleep. And in those moments, when her heart beats a little faster and her skin prickles with something she cannot name, she remembers what her grandmother used to say. Not everything that cries is asking for help. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more tales like this. Your support means the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Kindly leave a comment below.